A summer super slam has broken out between the Supreme Court justices, and I have a breakdown of all the robe ripping and gavel pounding action for you next. Let's begin with some context. The fighting erupted while the Supreme Court was imposing new restrictions on the power of lower judges to issue orders with nationwide effect. Have a look at these reaction clips by Representative Jamie Raskin and Donald Trump, and you'll understand who feels like they won and who feels like they lost. And on the other side, I'll dish the dirt on the SCOTUS Royal Rumble that is making news today.
Many of you are asking yourself about what this all means. Questions about the implications of today's Supreme Court decision on our Constitution, on the law, on our rights. Chief among them, what happens when the highest court in the land seemingly allows a carve-out for the executive branch to violate the Constitution? Luckily, I have the perfect, one of my favorite, probably one of your favorite too, constitutional scholars to ask. Joining me now is Democratic Congressman of Maryland, Jamie Raskin. Are you alarmed? How do you kind of see this ruling?
Well, it is an instructive tale about how many conservative Republicans have completely capitulated, but the people have not given in. On the contrary, the people are becoming more engaged and more outraged by every offense against the Constitution. Look, we've beaten Donald Trump 7 times in court on birthright citizenship. In 4 district courts, 2 Republican judges, a Reagan and Bush judge, 2 Democratic judges, Obama and Biden judge, and 3 appeals courts. 100% of the cases have said that his birthright citizenship executive order is completely unconstitutional, or as the Reagan judge put it, blatantly unconstitutional. He said in his 4 decades on the bench, this is by far the easiest case because of what he'd done. So you get a completely Trumpified, gerrymandered court stacked and packed by Donald Trump, and they know that they can't rule against the Constitution on this substance, so they pull a rabbit out of a hat and they decide that the Judiciary Act of 1789 has been misinterpreted basically for centuries, and that federal district courts do not have the discretion to impose a nationwide injunction, even if they're looking at something blatantly unconstitutional. They decide to use this case to completely overturn and revolutionize the doctrine of the equitable jurisdiction of a federal district court.
This morning, the Supreme Court has delivered a monumental victory for the Constitution, the separation of powers, and the rule of law in striking down the excessive use of nationwide injunctions to interfere with the normal functioning of the executive branch. The Supreme Court has stopped the presidency itself. That's what they've done. There are people elated all over the country. I've seen such happiness and spirit. Sometimes you don't see that, but this case is very important.
Such happiness and spirit. He has words, the best words. Well, there was no happiness among the justices while delivering this Trump win, according to many sources who even cited personal attacks. Let's begin with this report from MSNBC on the smackdown that is getting the most attention, and then I'll share a late-breaking story that reveals that another justice also put down his foot and put up his dukes.
And I just want to point something out that I don't know if folks have picked up on this or even know about this, but Justice Barrett gets personal going after Justice Jackson's dissent. And I want to let me read you this from this story, or from her dissent. We will not dwell on Justice Jackson's argument, which is at odds with more than 2 centuries worth of precedent, not to mention the Constitution itself, wrote Barrett. We observe only this: Justice Jackson decries an imperial executive while embracing an imperial judiciary. All right, Mark, look, this seems to me, when I read this, it seems to me that the comity that we have long known about the Supreme Court is gone. Like, the gloves are off when they're getting this seems to be a very personal response from one justice to another. Or am I reading too much into it?
It's very personal, and I think it's extraordinarily disrespectful and inappropriate from Justice Barrett, who touts herself as being collegial and professorial, but in this case clearly felt wounded by Justice Jackson's critiques. I think Jackson's blows clearly landed here. And Barrett responded with what I do agree is a far too personal retort that accuses Justice Jackson of not really being smart enough, I think, to levy a strong criticism of her opinion. That's totally out of bounds. It's highly unusual. Even when the justices disagree, they usually do so respectfully. And here, Barrett is going much further. And I think the reason why is really obvious, right? Justice Jackson's dissent is one of the sharpest, fiercest, most blunt dissents we've ever seen. She is taking on the Supreme Court as an institution in the conservative supermajority. It's one of several dissents she published this term where she accused the supermajority on the right of bias toward the Trump administration, of surrendering the rule of law so that Trump can rule like a king.
But wait, there's more. According to Politico, there was a tension-filled skirmish before the skirmish. The headline read, "Justices Nerve Fray in Supreme Court's Final Stretch. Liberal and conservative justices exchange zingers that undermine claims of a courteous and cordial court." And it went on to reveal some of the same details you just saw, but it also added another layer of SCOTUS drama.
While the liberal justices more often found themselves on the losing side than the conservatives, some members of the court's right flank also found occasion to voice grave concerns about select rulings. Consider a decision issued Friday involving an FCC fund that supports broadband access in rural areas. It's not exactly a hot culture war issue. And a mixed coalition of 3 conservatives and 3 liberals joined together to uphold the fund. But Justice Neil Gorsuch, animated by the case's implications for the balance of power between Congress and federal agencies, filed a lengthy dissent that accused the majority of embarking on a judicial misadventure and deploying ludicrously hypothetical reasoning. The majority, he wrote, defies the Constitution's command that power be divided among the branches. A day earlier, Gorsuch had exchanged sharp words with Jackson, but this time he was in the majority. Jackson, in an opinion joined by the court's other 2 liberals, suggested the conservative majority's decision allowing South Carolina to exclude Planned Parenthood from the Medicaid program. There amounted to a continuation of the long campaign by racists and segregationists in the South to resist federal civil rights laws enacted in the wake of the Civil War. A century and a half later, the project of stymieing one of the country's great civil rights laws continues, Jackson wrote. Gorsuch, a Trump appointee, dismissed the inflammatory claim out of hand, calling it extravagant.
Donald Trump has done to the Supreme Court what he's done to everything he touches, turned it into a spectacle of dysfunction and personal attacks. An institution that at least publicly appeared above the political fray now takes on a familiar tone. That's because at the center of the storm are Trump's handpicked justices bending reality to fit his authoritarian vision. The Supreme Court isn't just fractured, it is being held hostage by the MAGA majority, a majority that just neutralized any lower court's resistance to our out-of-control leader. They're not preserving balance, they're putting their thumbs on the scale in Trump's favor with legal loopholes that will enable his overreach. This is the Donald Trump doctrine infecting yet another branch of government. Reward loyalty, punish us versus them dissent, and shred any institution that won't play by the rules. Trump didn't just break norms and rules. He has now broken the Supreme Court, one of the 3 pillars of our government, and that is a very scary thing to say out loud.